This is the Mall, and it's all fake. It isn't what it looks like. It is a British Disneyfied manufactured landmark put smack bang in the middle of London, designed to trick and influence you. And yes, that is obviously a clickbaity headline, but this is history bait. Let me explain. Now, I shouldn't really have to go over this with you, but today the Mall is a big long road that runs between Buckingham Palace and Trafalgar Square. But if we turn the clocks back to a time when there wasn't a palace and there wasn't a square, and also no tourists taking selfies in between the traffic, this was just green and pleasant land that ran alongside a road called Pall Mall over there. And through the magic of editing, here we are on Pall Mall, which is next to the jail, according to this weird old map that I found. But it wasn't called Pall Mall back in the 1600s, it was just a road. This bit here, now St James's Square, was where a bunch of cool and hip people were coming together to play the latest craze. It was a game called Pall Mall, or Pall Mall. Never Pall Mall. I don't know why. I guess that would sound ridiculous. Apparently, it comes from an Italian word meaning mallet. And I don't have to explain Pall Mall to you, you know how it is. You get a wax-sealed envelope from your mate via a footman asking you to come out and play a game. You put your best breeches on, your wide-brimmed hat. As you're walking out the door, your dowager mother shouts at you, "Don't get mud on your jerkin," because you're always getting mud on your jerkin. And you go out and play. You know the rules, it's a bit like croquet. You've got a long alley, a hoop at the end of it in the ground, and you hit a ball with a mallet through the hoop. Whoever does it in the fewest turns wins. It's putting, but 17th century. Soon every morning there were hundreds here with mallets and iron hoops. Ultimately, the street became named after the sport, but what they really needed was a permanent Pall Mall alley to be constructed, and so that's what they did, just over there back in St James's Park. And through the magic of editing, this was that spot. Yes, shockingly, it was the Mall. It ran roughly along the wall of the park. It kind of went down here, much narrower in those days, just a bit of dirt with some tamped down crushed seashells for a surface, but roughly here. Now, St James's Park, which extends that away since the time of about King James VI, who the English sometimes dirtily call King James I, had landscaped the whole thing and filled it with a menagerie of animals like crocodiles and elephants and camels and all manner of animals completely unsuited to the climate. But at this point in the story, King Charles II is there on the throne, and he redoes the whole thing again, installing a Pall Mall alley. And soon it was the place to be seen, be it playing the game, getting out in your carriage, promenading around on foot. If you weren't here, honey, you weren't nowhere. But interestingly, this thing isn't here. There was a house here around that time called Goring House, but it wasn't Buckingham House until the 1700s, and it wasn't rebuilt into a palace and occupied by a monarch until the 1800s. That's post-Bridgerton, for any of you who can stand that programme. So this little posing park is just a little strip of land on the edge of a ceremonial garden that over the years became accidentally increasingly surrounded by royal palaces. There was zero intention for it to ever be any road of significance. So how did we end up here? Well, I can't speak for you, but I took the Northern Line to Charing Cross. The much more important question, though, is how did the Mall end up like this? And for that, we need to go down and see Queen Vic. What's weird about the UK is that since the Restoration, when we recreated the monarchy more as a ceremonial head of state than an actual one, we became quite different to the rest of Europe. And no, this isn't Brexit related, I promise. Instead of having a king or queen who could build stuff and spend money, we had a parliament who was building stuff and generally trying not to spend money. That and a combination of other factors led to London kind of falling behind the rest of the continent in its journey towards becoming a grand imperial city. Imagine Zone 1 in the 1800s. You don't have the esplanades of Trafalgar Square, the grand boulevards of Regent Street. You don't have the great offices of state of Whitehall. Instead, you've got an old, dirty, densely packed, slum-filled city that was frankly embarrassing compared to the capitals of the other European countries we considered ourselves superior to. During the 19th century, both local and national governments noticed this and spent a bit of cash clearing away some of the dodgy bits and building some nice buildings. But at the same time, the monarchy was in a bit of trouble as well. Queen Victoria, once our longest reigning monarch and now obviously completely pointless, became less popular with the public after her husband Prince Albert died and she entered 4 decades of post-bereavement reclusiveness. In some circles, The idea of a royal family was becoming deeply, deeply unpopular. So the establishment sprang into action to resuscitate the monarchy. Queen Victoria became Empress of India, a country she never actually bothered to visit. Things like the state opening of Parliament became a thing once again, and especially after Queen Victoria's death, Edward VII and his successors tried very hard to turn the level of pomp and circumstance continuously up to 11. Royal births, deaths, weddings and coronations became a public spectacle in a way that they realistically never had been before. Any excuse to get out the horses and carriages and silly costumes they would jump upon and make sure as many members of the public were able to see it as humanly possible. An enormous amount of what we think today as royal traditions started in the 1900s. And the latter part of the reconstruction of London to turn it into a more royal and grand city was centred around a stage that would let the royal family once again stake a claim in British public life. And that stage was the Mall. The front of BP was remodelled to have a balcony so the royals could wave down at us from somewhere. This was around the time of Downton Abbey Series 1, for those of us unable to read a book. The Victoria Memorial was constructed so that you wouldn't think of her as the absentee queen, but a wise ruler made completely of Portland stone. It was in the middle of a big forecourt laid out on the edge of Green Park that would funnel your attention down a new grand road laid out on the old remains of the Pall Mall courts before arriving at Admiralty Arch, which graciously connects it with Trafalgar Square. And thus an entire royal quarter was born. Everything here, from the flags and the shiny paint down to the red carpet surface of the road, is designed to instill in you a sense of ancient British royal grandeur. The sort of London that you imagined in your head, but that was never really here. It's a hugely successful bit of remodelling that by the time the 21st century rolls around, nobody even remembers really happening. This is just part of the furniture, the way that it's always been and always will be. Right? Please like and subscribe and comment. You can tip me if you want. The link is somewhere below. But also, have you ever noticed how there's a massive concrete World War II bunker just camping out at the bottom of the Mall? Like, does no one else find this a bit strange? It's got tunnels that connect it underground to different offices, including Downing Street, apparently. It's got a turfed roof for aerial camouflage, and it's just here amongst everything else. Like, totally bizarre. Anyway.